You know, here on the channel, we're all friends. We all like to share our tips for saving money. Well, you know, I do at least. The thing is, if you can save a few pennies, it really helps in this particular climate, doesn't it? And a lot of people have got in touch recently to tell me that they're coming to London either for the coronation next year or simply of the festive season. So if you are and you see me around filming, do come up and say hello. It would be lovely to meet you, as I say, in the flesh. But a lot have been asking, you know, what is the cheapest, fastest, most economical way to get round London? So I thought today I would share some tips with you about what I found, having lived in London now for quite a few years, on how to save the pennies as you explore this wonderful city. As ever, let me explain. Good morning, Neil Sean here. Now behind me, of course, is a typical London tube station. But no doubt when you come into London for the first time, you will fly into Heathrow, Gatwick, maybe London City Airport. And the first tip that I would give you is this. My advice would be not to get a cab, particularly if you're coming into Heathrow, because while we all love the traditional black cabs of London, and they are iconic, let's not forget they're also incredibly expensive. A trip, say, into central London could be anywhere from £60 to £120, depending on which cab company you get. And that's a very expensive start to your holiday. My advice would be, if you can manage this and your bags aren't too heavy, would be to simply get the tube, right? So the first thing is go down into the London tube, and then the first thing you really do need to buy, and this will cost you initially £5 to get the credit card, is this, an Oyster card. After that, what I would recommend is this, putting on around about 15 to £20. Don't bother buying the full 7-day card or 5-day card at this stage. Work out exactly whether you think you need all of that cash, and I'll explain that in a moment. Once you get into central London, you've no doubt picked a 1 to 6 or 1 to 7 travel card. But as I say, if you've already put £15 on, because you're travelling at certain points, it's actually cheaper after 9:30 in the morning. So once again, tap in, tap out. I also wouldn't necessarily use your contactless card. It can be cheaper on the fares with simply the Oyster. Interesting to note, eh? Now, a lot of people ask me, which is the best? Is it best to go on the buses or indeed the London Tube? Well, if they're not on strike, either one actually, it's more or less the same. My preference really is the London buses, because if you go upstairs, you can really get a flavour of this wonderful capital city. You know, you get to see the sights for free. All the while, if you go on, say, one of those big buses, the tour operators, you're paying for a very much a set route. So as I say, once you've got your Oyster card from the tube, my advice again really would be to see how you go with the money that you're putting on before you decide to buy a 7-day or 5-day travel card. For instance, you see, if you go into central London, Piccadilly Circus is very walkable to Leicester Square. Leicester Square is literally 2 minutes away to Covent Garden. But if you didn't know this, you would be spending each time going in and out of a certain tube. The only real way to get value for money outside of your Oyster card is if you're going on something like out to Richmond Park, one of the royal parks out there, or visiting, say, Kew Gardens, something like that. That's really when the Oyster card comes into its own. There are other money saving tips that I would recommend, particularly if you're going to places like Oxford or Windsor, which I will share in due course with you. But I really just wanted to let the few people that have now been in touch regarding which is the best way. The best way as ever really is, as I say, to get the Oyster card and then, you know, hop out and hop off where you fancy. But try and plan your route. And more importantly, don't necessarily take the word of, you know, even the tube staff, because while they know their lines, they don't necessarily know where all the historical sites are, all the fun things. Remember, they work for TfL and they simply are doing the best of their job. They're not tourist guides. The other side of it as well is when you've decided to, depart, and perhaps you have a little bit of money left on your Oyster card. Sadly, you know, you can't get a refund. Whatever you've got left on it simply, you know, is wasted. Unless you can find someone, perhaps on a social media site, if you've got a substantial amount, that wishes to buy it from you, say at a meeting place. Maybe using Meeting Place on Facebook. Again, good for the planet, as they say. You're not wasting plastic. But for now, the best way, in my opinion, to get around London in this cost of living crisis times will be to use this. Now, I'm not being paid. It's not a marketing tool. There's no endorsement. I just simply wanted to let you know, because a lot of people say to me, Neil, how do you get around town? I guess you have a chauffeur-driven car, jokingly, of course. I simply don't. I go on the buses or the tube. A lot of the time, if possible, I also like to walk, because again, good for you and you get to see certain things, particularly in a new area. If you're not quite sure where you're going, you stop and learn, don't you? So if you are coming to London for the festive season and coming over for the coronation, look out for that tip. As I say, this is the most economical way. Even when they put the prices up in the new year, it's far cheaper than using those very expensive black cabs or indeed Uber. If you are coming over, do enjoy yourselves, take care and remain vigilant and be safe. Neil Sean in the very heart of London.